Welcome to Tort Talk. This is the last Tort Talk of 2025 before we head into the holiday season. And we have some huge news that actually Joe Fantini broke last Friday. Late at night, I saw the message come through. We had a $40 million verdict come down in Talc. What can you tell us about the verdict and how it impacts the litigation moving forward, Joe?
Like you mentioned, John, great news coming out late last week. A jury in Los Angeles came down a $40 million verdict in favor of two plaintiffs. It was $18 million awarded to one plaintiff, $22 million awarded to the other plaintiff. This was interesting verdict because there was no punitive damages. Punitive damages are damages that are awarded to punish the company for their reckless conduct. So this was all compensatory damages. And immediately after, J&J did what they always do. They vowed to fight on and said they're going to appeal the decision. They won 16 of 17 cases. The jury was wrong, and the fight goes on. In reality, what's going to happen is we have a number of bellwether trials scheduled through 2026. So I think this is going to give us a lot of momentum going into the other trials. And hopefully this is the playbook that we can follow to get the jury on our side and put up some big numbers to finally bring an end to this litigation more than 15 years after it started.
Huge news. So for those of you that do not follow Joe on LinkedIn, I recommend you go and click that follow button on Joe's LinkedIn profile because he breaks news as it happens. We try to bring you guys the updates every week in a consolidated format, so you should subscribe here too to get notified when we release the newest Tort Talks, but please make sure you follow Joe directly if you want to get the latest updates. Mark, you want to roll us into the next case?
On to the next one. $32 million NEC verdict. Another big verdict in favor of plaintiffs, this time coming out of Connecticut against Yale Hospital. What happened in this case, Joe?
This was a little bit of a unique case. Typically in the NEC cases, the lawsuits have been filed against the manufacturers, mostly Abbott. But what happened in this case was, unfortunately, the minor plaintiff ended up passing away. And after the child was born in 2018, the mother and family insisted that the child was only given milk from the mother. Unknown to them, the hospital decided to mix some of the mother's milk with this cow milk, and ultimately this ended up causing problems for the child who developed NEC, and because the family wasn't warned by Yale Hospital, it ended up resulting in this huge verdict, $32 million in favor of plaintiffs. That brings our total to above $500 million in these NEC cases. It'll be interesting to see going forward how this impacts the cases, but I think we'll see a lot of cases where we're naming the manufacturer Abbott and then also the hospitals because they're the ones that are failing to warn about these risks associated with this litigation. So that's something that's going to be changing going forward, I'm sure.
Yeah, this is a really interesting update because, like you said, they've been primarily only going after the manufacturer, and this opens up a whole new avenue for this litigation, making all the hospitals where these premature babies are liable for giving it to them.
The fact pattern is the same, right? It's showing that the use of cow's milk given to a premature baby could potentially lead to NEC, regardless of whether or not it happened in the hospital, which would potentially be a medical malpractice case, or a product liability case from the formula itself.
Yeah, that's exactly true. So it just kind of brings another defendant into it. Sometimes what we see in these cases is that the defendants point at each other. The manufacturer says, no, it was the hospital fault. And the hospital says, no, it was the manufacturer's fault. So in this case, the only defendant was Yale. And it was pretty clear. The mother was clear. Only give my milk to the child. They didn't follow the instructions and they didn't warn. That's why the big verdict came down. But again, this is good news for the plaintiffs. Get us some momentum building for 2026 after we had a couple of defense verdicts.
Another case type that affects young children, toxic baby food. We had a full week Daubert hearing just wrapped up in the MDL. Was there any indication of how the judge might rule on the issues that are still outstanding in this case, or what happens next?
Yeah, it was really interesting in this case. Right before the MDL Daubert hearings came down, we got the ruling from the California State Court excluding the plaintiff's expert. So that information, that ruling was actually helpful for us because we were able to identify some potential holes, or at least what the court saw was holes in the expert testimony, and kind of beefed that up during the presentation. So overall, it went pretty well for the plaintiffs. What I'm predicting is a couple of our experts will survive. I I don't think the full stable is going to get in. There are going to be some kicked out, but as long as we can get 2 or 3 over the finish line there, that's going to really open up this litigation. We should have a ruling in the beginning of 26 before the end of the first quarter. And then this is going to be an MDL with a lot of cases. Supposedly, we're going to get above that 10,000 number threshold.
We heard from the judicial panel of the multi-district litigation following the last hearing of the year. 3 important cases were decided: weight loss, vision loss cases, video game addiction, and Roblox sex abuse. How did the panel come down in these cases?
Really interesting docket. Like you mentioned there, Mark, we had 3 mass torts in front of the panel, which is a little bit higher than we typically see. The first case you mentioned was the vision loss arising from the weight loss medication. The panel decided to form an MDL for this in the Eastern District of Pennsylvania. But what they did was they kept it 2 separate dockets. So we're in front of the same MDL judge, but we have a litigation ongoing for the vision loss cases, and then those gastric injuries are going to continue on their own track. Same thing like we saw in New Jersey. We had a setback because we were hoping to get a MDL formed for the video game addiction. This is the second time the panels rejected this request. This was a streamlined request, focusing in on less defendants and less games. The panel rejected it. Looks like that litigation is going to really be focused in California State Court. That's where all the action is going to be in 26 and beyond. Then we got some good news coming out of the panel. They granted the MDL for this Roblox sex abuse cases. Basically, we're going to have a docket there. We'll watch and see how many cases end up filing, but it's going to be centralized in the Northern District of California, just like the plaintiffs want it. It's a really friendly venue for us. Some really good judges out there. So we ended up getting 2 out of 3. We'll take that any day of the week. The panel saw that these cases would benefit from consolidation. So that's good for the plaintiffs here. Build some momentum going into next year.
Yeah, there's a lot of news as we head into the end of 2025. So many updates happening on the case types that you spoke about. We have bellwethers coming up in a number of cases in early 2026. I'm really looking forward to what's going to happen in these AI trials, the social media addiction trials that are coming up. A lot of news. I recommend subscribe to our channel. Get the latest updates when they happen. You can catch us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts. We're on Instagram. We're on LinkedIn. We're on Spotify. We will be in person at the NTL Summit in Miami at the end of January. So Joe will be there. Mark and myself will be there as well. We look forward to seeing you there. A very, very happy New Year. Happy holidays to everyone. And thank you so much for a great 2025. Joe, happy holidays. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you in the new year.
Thanks, guys. Happy holidays. See you in Miami.
See you in 2026.